Hello and welcome to Fresh Perspectives. My name is Gail, and you're going to be amazed at how knowledgeable my guest today is once she starts talking. Her name is Dinah Hovey, and she is a master gardener, and today we are doing a program on the soil food web. Why gardeners benefit from understanding how soil biology creates and maintains healthy soil. Thank you for agreeing to appear on Fresh Perspectives today, Dinah.
Thank you very much, Gail. It's my pleasure to be here. I have fallen in love with the soil food web, with trying to create healthy soil in my home gardens and growing the best nutritious food I can. And this is a welcome chance to share my enthusiasm and to educate people a little bit, and maybe they'll get bitten by the soil food bug and become a mini-me.
Mm-hmm. And she has a past history of having been a school teacher too, so you know how to inform people, don't you?
I've had many careers. I started out as a home economics teacher. I worked in Frederick, Maryland for the Cooperative Extension Service. I became certified as a massage therapist. I worked for the Senior County Nutrition Program as an employee of Chautauqua Opportunities. And I became a non-traditional student in my 50s, went back to the University of Buffalo, received a second Bachelor's of Science degree, and practiced occupational therapy for nearly 20 years.
Wow, well, that's quite a bit. And she knows Bill Kuick, too, by the way. Those of you in the viewing audience know him. Okay. Now, let's see. I'm trying to figure out where to start here. Now, what exactly is the soil food web?
The soil food web is a marvelous ecosystem. It's right under your feet. It's in the earth we stand upon, and it's in the soil in our gardens where we grow our flowers, fruits, and vegetables. It is made up of multiple members, some of them very small, like the things you might have learned in ninth grade biology, bacteria and fungi, protozoas. There are then larger organisms like nematodes and earthworms, even bigger things like ants and spiders and beetles, toads, birds. All of these organisms, especially the smaller ones, their main job is to eat and be eaten. In doing so, they decompose and shred the organic matter on the surface of Mother Earth. Did you ever wonder how the leaves that fall to the ground disappear? It's the soil food web. And in doing so, they recycle nutrients. They take a plant stem, and by the time they're finished, it's broken down into carbon, nitrogen, hydrogen, oxygen, things that are then building blocks for the next generation of organisms. Mm-hmm. It also is critical to the health and well-being of your plants. And because of that, because humans are dependent on plants, we ourselves, our very lives in existence, are in debt to the soil food web.
Yes. Now, I know with this information that you provided for me, there are harmful gardening practices that a lot of people do. And one that's probably going to be pretty surprising to some people is digging and tilling the soil every year to prepare the garden for planting. Now, until I read through this information and skimmed through this book that you had me look at, I did not know that tilling the soil contributes to global climate change.
Tilling the soil is a practice that lots of us engage in. For years, I couldn't wait to get out in the spring to have the vegetable garden plowed or to till over some of my raised beds. I love the smell of the earth and the dirt under my fingers But what happens when we till over the earth, we invert the soil layers and we cut up earthworms, we destroy the network that the fungi have created with the plant roots, we displace bacteria, we introduce oxygen that can more readily decompose organic matter, and then there is less food for the microbes to eat. It destroys the soil structure because the plant roots and the fungi are very important to creating the loose tilth, the friability, the soil that all gardeners dream of. One of the reasons that our agricultural topsoil has been lost is because it is regularly tilled with no cover crop to keep things in place. You can see pictures on TV of big tractors going down a field and a spew of dust in the air. That topsoil is going to be displaced by the wind, taken away from the fertility of the cropland. So it has become well known in regenerative gardening circles and organic circles that tilling is a real problem.
Yeah, I was really interesting to find that out. But so basically, digging and tilling is something you only do once, and that's just to start a garden the first time. Is that correct?
If your goal is to be a regenerative gardener, and not everyone will adopt this goal, and every gardener has a right to garden as they please, but if you're starting a new garden, it's perfectly acceptable to add lots of organic matter, to till that in at the time that you're establishing your garden. And if you want to continue regenerative practices, then you will limit your tilling, low tilling or no tilling.
Mm-hmm. And this is the book that you recommend the most for people for taking care of their soil?
This book is a really simple, easy to read, and fun, engaging book about the soil food web. It almost reads like a graphic novel. I tell people that if you're 10 years old or 110 years old, you can read and enjoy this book. I often give it away at a door prize when I'm doing a gardening talk. It's about $16. It's Grow Your Soil. Harness the Power of the Soil Food Web to Create Your Best Garden Ever by Diane Meisler. I would highly recommend, if you have any interest, that would be a good place to start. Now, I do have to say that I only came to this decision to become a no-till gardener when it became too difficult for me physically to turn over my gardens. I did not come willingly, and you may not either, but you might be surprised. In a few years, you might be in the same position that I am today. And if you do decide to go this route, you'll find you have much less work to do as a gardener.
Oh, yeah, and in this book, I was skimming through it last night, and I was reading something where it said something about all different kinds of things that visit your garden, and one of them was snakes, and snakes apparently serve a special purpose because they help to control the rodent population.
I have always welcomed snakes as a sign of a healthy ecosystem. I have seen garter snakes in my carport this year, in my raised bed garden, on my yard. It does mean that you have lots of areas for different kinds of animals to live and to find food and shelter. Now, if you don't want garter snakes in your yard and garden, I fully understand, but do understand that it means that you have a healthy ecosystem.
Yeah, I like snakes myself. I really love them, and so I get a big kick out of them. Usually in the summer months, we'll wind up having snakes hanging around in the compost pile or the compost bin. And I have to say, the other day, I really got a chuckle. Sometimes you see one or two hanging out in the compost, and it really amused me. I went to take some things from the kitchen out to put into the compost bin, and I open it up, and there's four snakes lounging on top of
They know a
of the
good
mulch.
place. There's lots for snakes to eat. Little pill bugs, little worms, all kinds of things. So that's a smart snake.
So we really enjoy seeing them when we go out to do that. Now, let's see. What other things are things that people shouldn't do in their garden?
One of the things we do is we clean up our garden in the fall. We, as Western gardeners, we don't like messy spaces. We like things neat and tidy. But nature does not take things away. She leaves them in place so that the falling leaves, the branches and twigs can be eventually decomposed, become part of the soil food web. There's a new practice called, it's probably not new, it's called chop and drop. I encourage people, even perennial flower gardeners, to consider this. You can cut the stems on many of your plants and then cut them in small pieces and let them fall to the ground so they're right around the plant and they will become organic matter, food for the microbes who will then support your plants. So removing all your vegetative matter is a problem if you don't replace that. There's the law of returns. If you're taking away stems and leaves, that's carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, potassium, iron, things that need to be in the soil. So if you don't replace that with well-aged compost or well-aged manure, you are just withdrawing from the soil bank account all the time, and eventually your bank account will not be healthy.
Well, a lot of this manure that you talk about comes from the microbes and the earthworms and like that?
No. Well-aged manure has food for microbes. Microbes will then eat the compost, eat the manure, and release the elements in a form that the plants can use. So compost and manure are really feeding the microbes in the soil food web.
Okay.
But that's it. It seems like a simple thing, but I started this whole process because I really wanted to explain to myself, what do plants eat and how do they eat it? And it wasn't as simple as I thought.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So let's see, we already discussed what the soil food web is. Okay. Well, maybe we should go on to have you talk about the books and the magazines that you brought.
Okay. Before we do that, I'd like to talk a little bit about meeting basic needs.
Okay. Oh, okay. On the second page
Yes.
here. Okay.
The members of the Soil Food Web are members of a community just like you and I are. They need a place to live. They need something to eat. They need a job to do. They need internet highways, and they need a computer kind of communicating system. We call these ecosystem services. And it is the biology in the soil, the bacteria, the fungi, the protozoa, the nematodes, the arthropods that operate the neighborhoods that they create. It is the biology in your soil, not the fertilizer, the NPK, the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium that you buy in a bag at your garden center. It is actually the microbes that do a much better job of feeding and protecting your plants. They create the loose soil structure. They protect plant roots from pathogens. They communicate with plants. But it all starts with the plants themselves. We know that plants photosynthesize to make sugar. They take carbon dioxide from the air and water from the soil and make a simple sugar, glucose, and a byproduct, oxygen. That's the oxygen that we breathe. But plants use a big percentage of this photosynthetic sugar to to make something called a root exudate. That is a liquid that they squirt out their roots. And if we could have our technician bring up the first scanning electron microscope picture. Here is a picture of a root, and you can see the liquid that is coming out. That is food, high energy, high protein, sugary food. Now, why would a plant do that? That is a very expensive metabolic process for the plant. Well,
would that be to feed the microbes?
Yes, it would be. That plant wants to attract specific bacteria, specific fungi that will come and live around it and help it. It will help it get water. The fungal mycelia can bring water from farther away. The bacteria can make minerals available so that the plant can eat them. So yes.
The colors are so pretty.
I don't know if those are the actual colors, but again, this is done by a scanning electron microscope, and they are beautiful pictures. So bacteria feed the plants because the plants feed the bacteria and fungi because the bacteria and fungi reciprocate and then will feed and protect the plants.
And then this is your book that says Teeming with Bacteria.
These photographs come from a wonderful series of books. There are actually 4. They're written by Alaskan horticulture writer Jeff Lowenfels. He started out as a traditional gardener using N, P, and K, but he fell in love with the soil food web and wrote a series of books. They all begin with the word teeming. There's teeming with bacteria, teeming with fungi, teeming with microbes, and I think the 4th is teeming with nutrition. But I have taken the liberty of sharing some of his electron scanning microscope photographs with you. So the bacteria are very important. They can even form a protective shield around the plant roots because there's so many of them. They're the tiniest member of the soil food web. They're the foundation of the soil food web. Everybody eats bacteria, so they're very important to have. They are prey for all the larger microbes.
They're a different kind of bacteria. They're different from the ones that cause disease.
The germ theory of disease, we first started learning about microbes mostly from a negative perspective, from the perspective of disease. But most everything in the bacteria family, the fungi family, the nematodes, most are beneficial. Even most insects are beneficial. There are very few that are harmful. We have another picture, I think is, can we bring up? Yes, here are some shapes of bacteria. They're a single-celled organism. They don't have a membrane around their nucleus. Their DNA is floating around free. And basically, they come in a spiral shape, a rod shape, or a sphere. And there are many variations on that, too. Can we bring up the next slide, please? Here we have bacteria that have infected, in a good way, the root system of this plant. Those little nodules, and for comparison, that's a hazelnut on the top of the picture, contain bacteria, nitrogen-fixing bacteria. These bacteria take the nitrogen from the air and fix it or make it in a solid form that then they feed to their plants. They may share some with other plants, but if you leave the roots of your peas or your beans in the ground after you grow them, that root and that nitrogen is going to be available then to the next group. So oftentimes farmers will plant nitrogen before they plant corn because corn is a heavy feeder. So if you have a root with some nodules, if you cut it open, if it's red, it means that it's doing its job. It is storing nitrogen. So think about that. Plants can do things that we can't do as gardeners.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Then let's talk about endophytes. The next picture. Okay. Here is a seed. Okay. All parts of your plant are going to have endophytes. What is an endophyte? Endo and phyte. Endo means within. Phyte means plant. These are things we find inside plants, inside the flowers, seeds, stems, trichomes, leaves, roots. They may not live their entire life there, but they live part of their life there. And they're very important. They help the seeds germinate. They help the seeds grow and develop. They help the seeds make compounds that resist disease and stress. They colonize and really have an impressive job description. And just as an example, Taxol, the drug that was an early cancer drug, is produced from an endophyte that lives in the Pacific yew tree. Let's talk now about the rhizophagy cycle. Can we have the next slide? Okay. This was so fascinating to me when I learned about this. And if you want to learn about it, you can look up Dr. James White from Rutgers University. He's one of the experts. Plant roots can engulf bacteria, take them inside. Once that happens, the plant can dissolve the cell membrane of the bacteria and use all the nutrition in that cell membrane for its own uses. Then those bacteria can also produce nitric acid, which is turned into nitrate, which is again the form of nitrogen that the plant is going to use. After a while, these bare naked bacteria collect along the wall of the plant root, and a plant hormone called ethylene forms, and all of a sudden, squish, these bacteria are expelled, you can see it best in the bottom picture, back into the soil, where they can reform their cell wall, and the rhizophagy cycle can start again. Rhizo meaning root, phagy meaning to eat. This is an example of endophytic bacteria. And remember, all your plants have endophytic bacteria. So if you ever buy, say for example, garlic to plant in the fall from a seed company, and it says soak it in hydrogen peroxide or a dilute bleach solution, do not do that. You are going to be hurting the endophytes that are in and around your plants. So endophytes are good, and they're everywhere.
Yeah, I've never heard of soaking them.
I got some garlic once from Fillory Farm, and they suggested that. And last year, Joe Lample on his gardening program, Growing a Greener World, mentioned that as a garden hack. Well, I got in contact with Joe and said, I don't think this is such a good idea. It's probably going to negatively affect the endophytes. Most plant seeds don't have harmful bacteria on them. And then now, do we want to talk about the fungus?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Fungus is very interesting.
It is.
She was telling me this morning, she was out to my house the other night, and she was telling me about these mushrooms that she saw growing across the road from my house, but you didn't know what kind they were, you said?
No, they were bright orange, and I was hoping they were chanterelles, which is a delicious mushroom, but they're not, because chanterelles grow singly or in groups of 2 or 3, and these were in beautiful, nice clumps. So I'm still trying to figure out what they are. They might be a jack-o'-lantern mushroom.
I think there's something called chicken of the woods.
That grows on a tree.
On a tree?
And these shiitakes do not.
Oh, okay.
But those kind of fungi grow around mostly shrubs and trees. And then there's another kind of fungi that grows in the soil around plant roots, and those are the ones that gardeners are interested in. 90% of all the known plants in the world form relationships, beneficial for the most part, with fungi. We call that mycorrhizal fungi. Myco for mushroom or fungus, and rhizo for root. So your mycorrhizal fungi are a very critical part of the soil food web.
Yes, your information that you had me read says, why do plants invite the fungus family for a snack?
Again, it's because the fungi reciprocate in large measure. A fungal cell is called a hypha, and it looks like a simple branching structure. It can have one nucleus or many. These grow or are attached end to end. And then when several strands of hyphae come together, they're called a mycelium, and multiple strands are called mycelia. If you've ever used wood mulch, you've probably turned it over and seen a whole bunch of white, thready, sticky kind of stuff. That is fungus. It is the kind of fungus that supports trees. You also see that kind of white, sticky stuff in your soil. The fungi, because they can grow in length, can travel away from where the plant root is, where the plant has to get its nutrients. It has to happen right next to the root. But the fungi can reach out 5-6 inches or more and find minerals and water that is not close to the plant and bring it back. And fungi can also make minerals in the form that plants can eat. They can make phosphorus available and many other things for the plants to eat, and in the form that plants can eat. We call this arrangement a symbiotic living arrangement. When you till your soil, it is these fungal networks, these mycelia, that you are breaking apart, and it takes a while for the fungi to recover. Also, can we see the next slide? I think it shows mycorrhizal fungi. No, that's another example of the rhizophagy cycle, where there are multiple propulsions, expulsions of the bacteria into the soil. So let's see the next slide. Okay, here is a root, and all those fine strands are fungi. Can you imagine how much nutrition those little threads can be bringing to that plant root that can't move? The fungi can sort of move by growing. The plant root moves by growing, but it can't do the same things that the fungi.
I guess a lot of people don't know that the mushrooms they eat are only a small part of the actual...
They're the fruiting body.
The part that we eat, but it's amazing.
It is.
Just how...
the very largest organism in the world is a honey fungus out in Oregon. Now that happens to be a pathogenic fungus, but it destroys pine trees, but it is the largest living organism in the world.
Yeah.
Now another thing that fungi do that's very important is that they also create a sticky glue called glomalin. Bacteria make a glue called biofilm, which helps them stay in place because they're so tiny they could be washed away. And fungi make glomalin. These are sticky carbohydrates, very glue-like. For the bacterial biofilm, think the tartar on your teeth. For the fungi, I don't have a metaphor. These hold soil particles together. They bind around plant roots. When they die, this glomalin is left. It's also a source of nutrition. Do we have... Okay, I think let's look at the next slide. Okay, here's endophytes on the right. It shows bacteria in the cell, and there is an example of fungi around the roots, mycorrhizal fungi on the left. Okay. Then look at the next slide, and you can see the benefit to a plant root system. The one on the left has been inoculated with mycorrhizal fungi versus the one on the right. So mycorrhizal fungi greatly expand the root zone, the surface mass of the plant root, help it grow healthier, bigger, and stronger. I don't know if that's a corn plant or what.
Yeah, I was just wondering what what it was.
The plant root systems are going to be bigger, and the bigger the root system, the better the plant. You always want to encourage healthy root system.
Like sometimes if you get like some damaging wind come through your neighborhood, like if you've got corn in the garden, it'll blow all of the corn stalks over. Sometimes they'll stand themselves back up again, and sometimes they won't.
Depends on whether or not the roots were ripped. But that would be a disturbance to the soil fungal food web. Can we look at the next picture? That will show us, this is glomalin that is surrounding the strands of fungal mycelia. They produce a lot of it, and it really is important to creating the soil structure, these organic glues that the microbes make. And that's one reason that you end up with good garden structure, loose and easy to use. It holds the aggregates of the soil in place so that they don't collapse. And in addition to making the good soil structure, the benefit of that is that your soil then can have more water infiltrate, can have more water stored. It can provide air pockets. Soil needs air. Roots have to breathe air. Gases have to enter the soil. The nitrogen from the atmosphere has to get in the soil so the rhizobacteria can make fixed nitrogen. Carbon dioxide and air and nitrogen all have to be exchanged and come back out of the soil. So when I first became a gardener, I was interested in making my soil better. And I only knew about soil texture. Soil texture talks about the size of the particles in the soil. Your soil comes from the parent rock that is weathered over time, and it becomes either sand, silt, or clay. Sand is the biggest size particle, silt is the medium sized particle, and clay is the tiniest. You want a mixture of these in your soil. In our area, we have a lot of clay soil. Some people think that's not easy to deal with, but it's really good. Sand and silt are mostly made of silicon dioxide. Clay is a mixture of many, many other mineral nutrients, and clay happens to have a negative charge. So many of your plant essential nutrients have a positive charge, and so with clay particles having a negative charge, in the world of electricity and magnetism, opposites attract. So your clay soil can hold on to a lot more nutrition. The trick is making it available, and that's where you need your soil food web.
Oh, yeah. Who would have ever thought? I think probably most people, it never occurs to them that there is so much to the soil food web. They don't even probably don't even realize.
You can see why I find it amazing.
What's going on?
We've only been able to make strides in understanding the microbes as beneficial symbionts for 30, 40 years. In 1980, Dr. Elaine Ingham, then at the University of Oregon, she's a soil microbiologist. She's funny, she's down to earth. I encourage you to look her up on YouTube. That's how I got started. I discovered her YouTube videos. She coined the term soil food web because it explains how things are so interwoven and complex. It isn't an I eat you and then you eat somebody else and that person or that microbe eats somebody else. I eat you, you eat me, I own kind. Everybody eats everybody else. Bacteria eat fungi, fungi eat bacteria. It's very complex. It resembles a web design. And so that's why we now call it the soil food web rather than the food chain. We grew up learning about food chains.
Right, right.
And did I have a picture of a worm? I don't think I did. Do I have a picture of an earthworm? Yes.
Oh, there it is.
Okay.
Okay.
Now these are master gardeners. Worms are master gardeners, and most of us recognize them and welcome them. You can see some big holes where they've tunneled. Those are air spaces where water and air can go. Down below the worm, you see some clumpy texture. That is a worm casting. That is poop from the earthworm. That is one of the best fertilizers you can get. Earthworms excrete calcium carbonate as they make their castings, but they're also high in lots of other nutrients. They may deposit this on the top of your soil. You've probably seen these little crumbs next to a hole, and also in some of their lateral tunnelings. But earthworms are master shredders. They can come up to the surface and take a leaf and chew it up. They don't have teeth. They have a gizzard like a bird, but their excrement is terribly, terribly nutritious. And their tunneling activity can move bacteria and fungi, I guess, to different locations and really improve the soil.
Over the last couple of nights, I ran across some information. Well, actually, I heard about this from somebody else who was talking about trees at one of our dinners. But there's something called an Asian jumping worm.
Yes.
That we probably might want to warn the viewing audience about.
Thanks for mentioning these invasive creatures.
Yeah, because they're an invasive creature.
They're invasive and they're harmful. They have been in our country for several decades. They probably came in on horticultural material from ships and things like that. But instead of enriching the soil, they deplete all the organic matter. They're voracious feeders. They will consume all the organic matter in the topsoil. When that happens, plants don't have a stable medium in which to put down their roots, and they have nothing to eat. They're an annual worm. They're a little different. They lay eggs, and the new crop hatches in the spring, so you aren't going to see these in the early spring. You'll see them later. They're a bit different than a regular earthworm. They move in a jerky, erratic fashion, and they have nicknames like Alabama jumpers or crazy worms. Also, they have a clitellum that is in a different position. The clitellum is that thicker part of the worm that you see on a mature worm. It's an organ that's going to secrete mucus to enclose an egg sac. Now, on your Asian jumping worms, that clitellum is in the middle of the body. On a regular earthworm, it'll be more toward one end. Also, on the Asian jumping worm, that clitellum in the middle of the worm body lies flat. On a ordinary worm, it is more raised. And also on an Asian jumping worm, it completely encircles the worm, whereas in a regular worm, it's more like a saddle. So if you find these, and there are gardeners that I know that have them in their garden, they're at Chautauqua Institution, please destroy them. Do not put them in compost. Kill them. You can put them out on the sunny sidewalk and let them die. You can put them in your trash, but they are a concern because they change the top soil, the soil layers.
And they're extremely long. Is that
no? They're not extremely long.
They're not extremely long, but they can jump long distances. Is that what it is?
Because they don't really jump. They sort of wiggle and move erratically, and it looks like jumping.
Oh, okay.
When you hold a regular worm in your hand, he'll squirm and wiggle a bit, but a jumping worm is going to twitch and move. I've never seen one live. I've only read about them, so I don't know exactly. I don't think they really jump like a jumping worm. I think it's more their...
As far as I know, I've never seen any, but you never know. I might not have known what I was seeing.
Well, I think you would notice a worm moving quickly, and
earthworms don't move quickly.
No.
Okay.
Not like an Asian jumping worm.
So, a worm that appears to be acting crazy.
Yes.
Then, and you wanted to talk about a little bit about cover crops.
Okay. When we think about regenerative gardening, there are several principles that we want to consider. And one of those is keeping living roots in your soil as long as you can. Mother Nature abhors bare soil. That's why she loves weeds. Her weeds are the clothes of the earth. There's a soil scientist named Ray Archuleta, and he has a quote that I love to share. Ray Archuleta says, "Bare soil is naked, hungry, thirsty, and has a fever." Well, he's right. Soil that is not covered is going to be hotter than regular soil. It's going to hold less water. It's going to hold less organic matter. So keeping your soil covered provides lots of benefits. And you can do this by using mulch and by growing cover crops. I have a package of mixed seed cover crops here, and it includes, this is called a soil builder mix. It includes mung bean, common vetch, spring lentil, crimson clover, pearl millet, spring oats, garden flax, phacelia, black oil sunflower, safflower, sorghum, spring barley, and ryegrass. This is what we call a cover crop cocktail. And rancher Gabe Brown out in South Dakota in Bismarck believes that if you're going to use cover crops, peas and oats are good, but a cocktail is better. More species will have leaves at different levels that can capture sunlight. Plants are really farming sunlight, so you get more efficient photosynthesis. And also, what is more diverse above is going to be more diverse below. Different plants will attract different microbes, which will have different jobs to do in the soil. But if you want to start out with oats and peas, that's how I started out. I used it on my garlic crop, because garlic will come out by mid-July, and then you've got a long growing season. And then I chopped and dropped my cover crop and covered it with cardboard. And by the time I wanted to plant garlic bulbs in late September, early October, my garden was ready to plant into the cover crop, had been decomposed. So cover crops are one way that you can add nutrition to the soil. Think about all the exudates that are going to go in the soil from that cover crop, and then all the biofilms and glomalin from the microbes that will come. So the benefit of cover crops, let's read here. They moderate soil temperature, they retain water, they prevent soil-borne pathogens from being splashed onto plant surfaces, they reduce competition from weeds, they prevent soil surface crusting. Have you ever seen your soil cracked?
Yes.
That's
yes.
crusting.
Okay.
And that means you've got compaction, and that means the plant root isn't going to have air to breathe or be able to spread its roots there. They prevent nutrient leaching. They prevent soil erosion with field crops. They're really, really important. I started small. With any of these things that are new to you, you can choose to not do them, or you can choose to start small. I recommend starting small. You will be amazed if you use these practices at how quickly your soil changes color and gets good structure. So cover crops are a good part of that. You can chop and drop them. We talked about not tilling, but sometimes you have to till shallowly. For example, if you're going to use marigolds as a treatment against nematodes, those have to be lightly incorporated into the soil for that to be the best.
Okay. So that would be one thing that you would till.
So keeping your soil covered with cover crops or mulch is very, very good. The cover crops keep those living roots in the soil for as long as possible. So the soil food web is active even in cold temperatures. I mean, if the soil surface warms up to 28 degrees, you're going to get some activity. So even in the dead of winter, it's a good thing if you have a living root in your soil. Because as soon as the temperatures begin to warm, the microbes can begin to provide food for any emerging seeds and plant roots. We talked about the law of returns. Cover crops help return nutrition to the soil. Creating your own aged compost is another very good thing to putting things back in your soil, especially if you're growing a tomato and your compost is made of tomato. You're feeding the plant what it wants.
Oh, yeah.
I had a bed of impatiens flowers for years, and I said that these flowers eat flowers because I would till the impatiens right back into the soil right where they grew. And I had beautiful impatiens for years. So keeping your soil covered, keeping living roots in the soil, replacing nutrients with now you have to have well-made compost and well-aged manure. Your compost needs to get hot and it needs to smell good. So you need to study up. I'm not going to talk much about compost other than there are ways to do it that result in a good product. The same thing with manure. You never want to put hot, fresh manure. All manures are better if they are composted or even just added to your compost. One exception that I know of is alpaca manure. That's not hot. That could be put on growing plants. But anything you're adding, you want to be in the soil for a little bit before you plant. So if you put spring compost, wait 2 weeks before you plant, if you can. In the fall, which is when a lot of us like to add things, you've got that whole time span over the winter for the change in temperatures and the snow and the rain to start to break down some of that compost. We talked about no-till or limited tilling, how you don't want to displace your soil food web. You want to keep them doing their jobs. You want to keep your soil structure from being destroyed. Also, when you till a lot, and when agriculture tills a lot, we have the problem of nutrient leaching. We all know about the problems with the green algae blooms in our lakes and waterways. That's a lot of nitrogen and phosphorus that has leached. I think we have a picture. We might have to skip over some, but we have a picture of some soil erosion. Could we find those?
Oh.
Here is water running off a field. It's taking soil with it. Now, phosphorus is going with the soil. Phosphorus doesn't leach in the water necessarily. It leaches in the soil that's displaced by the water. But other nutrients are water soluble, and they will leach. This is a big reason that our waterways are not healthy. If you have a healthy cover crop or crop residue, you can see that there's sparse green cover there, and this area that's washing out doesn't have any cover. So it doesn't have any root, it doesn't have enough root structure, enough sticky glues like glomalin and biofilm, doesn't have enough mycelia holding the water in place. With your soil food web, your water will sink into your soil and it will stay there and it won't run off. So that's an example of erosion of.
Okay.
And then the next picture shows a different kind of erosion. What do you see there? You see dirt in the air. Dirt's not supposed to be in the air.
No.
So anytime that we cultivate and till with plows, we are going to destroy the soil food web, destroy the structure, and lose air via the wind. There are new machines that some farmers are using where the seed is drilled into the soil,
okay.
right into the crop residue. But it takes an investment in a different kind of machine and a whole change of mindset.
Oh, I suppose.
But agriculture, there are people who are doing this successfully. Mr. Muncie, who grows corn in Chautauqua County, I'll give a plug to Mr. Muncie. His corn stand just got put up in Asheville. I think he might supply it at Lighthouse.
He does.
He's a fan of cover crops. So he knows that it's helping his soil, helping the fertility and the structure of his soil.
Do you know if there's more pictures? We've got like 8.5 minutes left.
My clock says we have 17. That's our pictures.
Oh, we've seen all the pictures. Okay, I wanted to make sure that we saw all of them.
Thank you, Chris. Our wonderful technician, Chris, made sure that we had all those available to you.
Yeah, I'm
And
glad.
thank you, Jeff
that-
Lowenfels, for those scanning electron microscope.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
A word on pests and diseases, okay?
Yeah.
As your soil gets healthier, your plants are healthier, they don't attract insect pests and diseases to the great degree that a sick plant might. A sick plant is communicating certain chemicals, volatile chemicals in the air, in the soil, and insects and pests know this, and they will come and attack it. Your healthy plants have high levels of sugar, high levels of nitrogen and proteins. In fact, grape farmers check the Brix, B-R-I-X. That's a measure, I think, of the solids or the sugars in your sap plant. High Brix plant is going to be healthy and not succumb so easily. Plants have amazing ways of defending themselves. They can thicken the wax covering on their stems and leaves, the cuticle. They can close the stomata, the air pores on the underside of the leaves. They can communicate to other plants that they're under stress, so other plants can start making bitter compounds in their leaves and tissues. It's just, pardon me, amazing. So, if you use pesticides, you're going to kill it all. Kill the good, kill the bad. And the funny thing is that the bad populations recover faster. So if you've really worsened your situation, there's no way that you're going to solve your pesticide problem with pesticides. Have healthy soil, cover your soil with mulch. That's going to prevent some insects from finding the soil to lay their eggs. Go out at night into your garden with a flashlight. I was out last night picking slugs out of my runner beans and my kale. Oftentimes, cucumber beetles are much more active at night. There are things you can do with companion planting. Some people say it's not scientifically determined, but there are now some studies that are showing that certain things work together. I like to use basil with my tomatoes. It makes them taste better, I believe. I like to grow nasturtiums or radishes with my cucumbers and squash, and I have very little problem. I introduce flowers into my garden so that I'm attracting beneficial pollinators. I pick by hand. I go out every day, morning and night, when I walk my dog, and I'm picking snails and slugs and asparagus beetles off my plants. I realize a big farmer can't do that, but in your home garden you might be able to do that.
That would be a really big job.
Right. And another thing you want to make sure you do, if you are adding other fertilizers to your soil, do not add the synthetic salt NPK. It's fast acting, fast leaching. Much of it does not even get used by the plant, and it is irritating and harmful to your soil food web. You want to use things that are organic, like a great one is a liquid product made from either kelp or fish, or a combination. If you use the fish, it'll be smelly, but only for a little bit. You want to get the hydrolysate, which is processed at cold temperatures and uses whole fish rather than an emulsion, which is what's left over, doesn't have as much fat or protein, and it's cooked at a higher temperature. This is an expensive product, but you can spray it on your plants, you can spray it on your seedlings. It's a wonderful fertilizer. You can also drench the ground. So I'm a great fan of a Neptune product called, I don't know what it's called, but it's got, think about kelp, all the sea minerals you're going to get.
Right.
Think about our native ancestors here on this land that we live on that grew corn and beans and squash and fertilized the hills with fish. They were onto something.
Yeah, you kind of need seaweed. I read that about 25% of all women, 25% of all women have thyroid problems because of a lack of iodine from the modern farming.
That's very possible. And of course, seaweed is a good source of iron. You can get sea salt. If not, make sure your salt is iodized. That's a good thing to know. Yeah, kelp is just a whole cosmos of minerals, probably all the minerals that there are, I would think. But here's something interesting. We talk about plants needing NPK, and then there's some other nutrients like calcium and iron and sulfur and boron. Plants actually need all the minerals, but they need many of them in a minute amount. They even need arsenic, which is a poison, but they need it in a small amount. So the more plants you have, the more minerals you're going to be having, the better your compost is, the more minerals are going to be available. So I really encourage you to use cover crops, use feather meal, bone meal, blood meal, things that come from organic sources. They won't break down as fast, but those microbes will make them available to the plant.
What seeds are these?
These seeds I brought, it was going to be part of my introduction. These are round and wrinkly. They look like a little brain, a little cranium. This is one of the reasons I am a gardener. In kindergarten, I went to George Washington School in Kenmore, New York, and our teacher had us save our wax milk carton, and in that we planted these nasturtium seeds. To this day, the nasturtium flower is one of my favorite flowers. It's a great companion plant, and these are seeds from nasturtiums that I grew last year. If you want to grow something with your grandchildren, this is a good way to start. And they self-sow. The seeds will drop to the ground, and you may find that you have them. So I want to thank nasturtiums for setting me on a good path.
Yeah, we've had nasturtiums in the garden.
And I love to eat their peppery leaves.
They're very spicy tasting. So anybody who likes spicy, peppery tasting things should plant nasturtiums.
They're a great addition to your salad, and they're one of the edible flowers. How much time do we have left, Gail?
45 seconds according to the timer.
Okay, let me just show you some books. We talked about the soil food web. This was by the rancher Gay Brown out in the Dakotas. His book is titled Dirt to Soil, One Family's Journey into Regenerative Agriculture. If you want to study regenerative agriculture, he's great, also down to earth. Here's another simple book on the soil food web, A Soil Owner's Manual by John Stika. This book, if you know music and have a sense of humor, this man is an organic orchardist, Michael Phillips. It's a little more complicated, but he has great pictures and diagrams, and I'm a good fan of rereading things. We talked about the series by Jeff Lowenfels, and this is my favorite magazine. I started a subscription online, and I get it in print from Acres USA. They are the voice of eco-agriculture. A lot of it deals with farming, but what's going on in farming can go on in your garden, or you're just a farmer on a smaller scale. So they have topics of great interest to me. Here's Grow Vegetables with Nutrient Integrity. I was very happy to speak with the Vegan and Vegetarian Society, of which Gail is a member, on healthy soil, healthy food, healthy you. Here is a magazine divided to cover crops, cover a lot of ground. Here's one with the title Becoming Better Stewards of Our Land. So this talk today has been about healthy soil food web, healthy plants, and in the end it means healthy people.
Is it okay for people in the viewing audience if they would want to get in touch with you? Or?
I would love that.
And how could they get in touch with you? You have a website, is it?
Oh, no. I don't have a cell phone, but I have Gmail and I have a phone number. My phone number is 782-4342. It is in the 716 area code. And my email is my given name, which is Diane with two N's, DIANNEHOVEY@gmail.com. I have a phone number of a gentleman that I have to talk to next week. He came to the Master Gardener Helpline. He had started raised beds with sand and horse manure, and his plants are not doing well.
Uh-oh.
Well, he doesn't have any clay. Remember, sand and has silica and oxygen and a number of other things. So I will be talking to him. Yes, I am really ready and able and eager to engage in any conversation. I don't know all the answers. Master gardener does not mean I know everything, but it means I'm a good detective, and I'm curious and willing to work for you to come up with some answers. But you also need to be willing and able to work if you want to become a good gardener, a good steward of your soil. It is a change in the mindset, and it does take a little time and effort, but the rewards are wonderful.
Well, thank you so much. This has been so interesting, and I'm sure that the viewing audience has heard a lot today that they never knew before. And I'll see those of you in the viewing audience when I do the next episode.
And Gail, my next talk is going to be August 21st at the JCC tennis courts where our demonstration garden is. I'll be talking about seed saving.
Oh, good, good.
Thank you.
You're welcome.